First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you all for coming. I'm extremely overwhelmed by the support I had in this journey. Your support, each and every one of you, in different ways means the world to me. Without all of you, none of this would be possible. I see so many faces here that have supported me, not only from the beginning of this book journey, but my nursing career, and even before that. I have my charge nurse from when I was a 20-year-old LPN, my first job as a nurse. She's here, and it's just surreal. It's the nurses like her that give us baby nurses a chance. It's just, this was just all a crazy dream of mine, and all of a sudden this dream has become a reality, and I still can't believe it. I think I'm in shock. And it's because of all of you, your support, your pre-sales, your sharing my posts, that the big box stores like Target and Walmart actually picked up my book. I was told in the beginning of this journey that that would probably never happen, but I wanted to self-publish anyway. This is my story, and I didn't want to change my story to what the big publishers thought would be a bestseller. This was never about how many books I could sell. The Last Nurse, get my title right, is more than just the first book I've written. Even though this book is fictional, a lot of it is true to me, my life, my journey, and even my sobriety. As a lot of you know, I just celebrated 3 years sober from alcohol, and that's if writing this book has been anything, it's cathartic. It's given me the opportunity to look back at my life and truly reflect, not only on how I've grown as a nurse, but how I've grown as a person. I dedicated my first novel to my friend, to some of us, our friend, who sadly took her own life 8 years ago. Like so many of us here once were, she was a nursing student. She was confident, she was caring, and she wanted to save the world. She was an amazing person, and she would have made such an amazing nurse. To be honest, almost every healthcare professional I've ever worked with in the last 11 years has been an extraordinary human being. Like they say, it takes a special person. I know we've all heard that quite a bit in our careers. In healthcare, we're often made to feel like we always have to be the strong ones. For 12 hours a day, we push aside our own emotions so that we can be the emotional support to our patients and their families. So often in this profession that is dedicated to caring for others, we forget to care for ourselves. So many of us are fighting the same demons side by side in silence, especially after the last 2 years. If you have battled depression, crippling anxiety, nagging self-doubt, wondered if you're actually cut out for the career you've dedicated your life to, and probably that you're still paying off student loans for. I hope my novel reminds you that you're not alone. I think it's about time we stopped being silent. Let's start talking about our mental health. This book has been a huge part of my life for the last 2 years. Its first raw form was scribbled out on a spiral notebook paper for a self-publishing class I took in the beginning of 2020. And I actually have my teacher here, Nadia, from that self-publishing class. When that class ended, she made us all promise that when we did write our books, and she's not if, she said did, that we would invite her to our book event. So I kept well on that promise, and she did. After that class, though, it took me almost a full year to even revisit that notebook, this notebook. Then I quickly decided to purchase a laptop because there was no way I was going to write a book by hand in a spiral notebook. But hey, you gotta start somewhere. Sometimes I still can't believe that this chicken scratch turned into an actual novel. If it's all right with all of you, I'd now like to read a little bit of my book, The Last Nurse. Oh, and bookmark made by Rebecca, who made my cover art. She's right over there, so talented. If it wasn't for her, this book would not have used. She made a cover that completely stood out. It told a story of its own. And I can't thank her enough for that. So let's give it up one more time for Rebecca. After taking a few steps forward, I realize I'm now standing outside my patient's room, 542. Okay, Sam, back to reality. I need to mentally prepare myself before entering this room. The patient lying in the hospital bed behind the door is 44-year-old Colette Simmons. I admitted Mrs. Simmons to the hospice floor on Thursday night, which was essentially my Monday morning. Now it's Saturday night, which is again, my Friday morning. I know, confusing, right? Colette was in excruciating pain when she was initially transferred to our floor. I couldn't stand seeing her in such distress. It was awful. She had tears streaming down both of her cheeks. She screamed in agony when the two men transferring her moved her from the gurney to the hospital bed. The men were as gentle as possible, but it was no use. The slightest movement caused Colette immense pain. Mrs. Simmons has a hospice diagnosis of end-stage metastatic breast cancer. This means her cancer, which originated in her breast, has spread to her lymph nodes. Despite chemotherapy and radiation treatments, her cancer continued to spread to her bones before finally spreading or metastasizing to her brain. This is when Summit Valley's lead hospital oncologist regretfully informed Colette and her husband Roger that her situation was terminal. Colette and Roger had 2 school-age children, Liam and Macy. On the night she was transferred to our floor, Roger disclosed to me that he didn't know how he'd raise his children without his wife. He said Colette was the backbone of their family, the glue that held them all together. He feared that if he lost his wife, everything he had and everything he was would shatter into a million pieces. I held this man in my arms as he cried. He cried for the years he spent working too late and the countless home-cooked meals he'd missed, the anniversaries he'd forgotten, and the phone calls he'd sent to voicemail because he'd just been too busy to talk. He mourned the years that were being stolen from them. He begged for more time. That night, after Roger released me from his embrace, I left room 542 and walked straight to the supply room. Once inside, I lay my back against the supply room door, unable to keep my body from sliding to the unforgiving hospital floor. There, alone on the cold, sterile tiles, I cried. I cried for the man who had been uncontrollably sobbing in the arms of a stranger only moments before. For the 2 children who would be forced to face life without a mother. For the woman currently lying in the hospital bed of room 542, who wouldn't live to see her 45th birthday. After giving myself a minute, I picked myself up from the hospital floor and forcefully wiped away one final tear from my cheek. I smoothed out the few wrinkles in my scrub top, adjusted the stethoscope hanging around my neck, and walked out of the supply room. I returned to work, acting as if my heart hadn't been ripped out of my chest just 15 minutes prior, because that's what nurses do. Yeah. So that was the happiest part of the book.